Ma is an animal liberation activist with various groups, and today he's on the streets of Edmonton advocating for Rose's Law. It's great to see you again, Max.
It's great to see you, Janine. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And so tell us about Rose's Law and why do we need an animal bill of rights?
So Rose's Law is a pressure campaign. It's happening around the world, and activists are asking governments to pass legal protections under the law for animals. And it's going on in France and Germany and England, all across the US, all across Canada. And we are asking governments to pass laws and change laws to protect animals because they are very weak and they have no teeth behind them. And we need an animal bill of rights because we need to end what I call species apartheid. And if we want to live in a world of peace and fairness and equity, we need our laws to reflect that. And if we want to live in a civilized world, we need to offer those legal protections to the beings, these beautiful animal beings that we share this world with, some legal protections. And until we achieve that and accomplish that, we will never know peace in this world. And that's why we are asking for legal protection for animals.
And we can extend the definition of animals also includes humans, right? So it includes us as well as our animal friends. And what are I see the banner behind you has a list of the different requests. So what are the different rights?
So we are doing an outreach booth right now at the Old Strathcona Farmers Market in Edmonton, and this is the banner of Rose's Law. Get that in the shot.
Yeah, that's good.
These are some of the asks of Rose's Law, and this is what we like to enshrine in the Constitution. So the right to rescue, the right to the protected home and habitat, and the right to legal representation, because animals do not have a voice of their own, so we are their voice. And a right to not be killed by humans, and a right to be free and not owned. So these are the laws that will end this slavery system that reigns over us, where we have a system where human beings are deemed as supreme and these individuals are just used and abused as property with no rights, like property such as a bicycle or a cell phone, and rather than animals being the individual sentient beings that you and I know that they are.
And who's Rose? Who's Rose? Why is it called that?
Rose was a hen that was saved from activists in California, and police ended up taking away many of those hens, but they spared one hen named Rose. And this action was inspired by Direct Action Everywhere. It started last year, and we're going to continue this campaign every year and every month, every week until laws get changed.
And I just got some news that DXE, Direct Action Everywhere activists infiltrated a Smithfield slaughterhouse on the West Coast somewhere and tried to carry a pig out. And then police arrived and arrested 7 of them, and they were charged with trespass. So also Rose's Law would give activists the right to expose the different things that happen to animals, I guess, eh?
Yes, absolutely. That would be under the right to rescue. And that is an issue for the human animals, primarily trying to rescue the non-human animals and establish the right to rescue. Now, most of us, Janine, I think we would agree that if we saw a dog sweltering and suffocating in a hot car, that we would be morally, ethically, and legally right to break the window and free that dog and not suffer persecution under the law, be arrested for it. That is considered the right to rescue. And under an Animal Bill of Rights, we would like to extend that right to any animal suffering anywhere, in any facility, in any place that they're abused by corporate interests, whether that be the dog in the hot car or a horse being trampled on in the rodeos, or an animal, a duck in a factory farm. We believe that they all need legal protections and that the activists rescuing them should not face legal consequences. Now, I've had my own instances of that, doing civil disobedience and trying to film criminal animal abuse, that I myself and many of us have been arrested and charged, whereas it should be those in industry, those that are perpetrating the criminal animal abuse, they are the ones who should be charged, instead of vice versa, the animals who are exposing it and rescuing them. So our system is backwards, and that is because of the corporate lobby that animal agribusiness and animal husbandry interests have on our governments.
Right. And so some of the local issues that you've been working on, you sent the example of Lucy the elephant at the store. Is it the Storyland Valley Zoo? Is that where Lucy is?
The Edmonton Valley Zoo.
Edmonton Valley Zoo. Okay. And what's an elephant doing in Edmonton? That just sounds really not right.
No, absolutely not. She's from Sri Lanka. She's a Southeast Asian elephant. She belongs there in the wild. She was kidnapped and she spent 43 of her 45 years of her life here. And it's, again, because the laws are weak and city council won't address her issue. And we're asking the public to put pressure on their city councilors in order just for them to talk about her plight in City Hall. And it's been a struggle for years and years. There's been lawsuits. You can find it online at voiceforanimals.org, or sorry, that's b4a.org, or Leap for Lucy. I'll include the links. So our table here, we have several issues. Sorry, it's kind of blowing away a little bit. You can see this. We've got Lucy cards over here on this table here. So a little bit about Lucy. So these are the kind of the information we're distributing today, and asking for citizens to contact their MLAs, MPs, and really our legislators. They're obligated to respond to us because they are our employees. So if we call them, email them, they have to respond. And it's up to the caring citizens to hold them to accountability in Canmore, Alberta, at facilities called Howling Dogs and Mad Dogs. And we also have issues here about Nation Rising, which is ending subsidies to the animal agriculture business in Ottawa. And we also have information from the Canadian Horse Defense Coalition. CHDC is that's the activist group that is suing the federal government about live horse transport. And that's happening in our Edmonton, Calgary, and Winnipeg airports. So horses spent in the industries of horse racing and the rodeo, after their use and of no use to the industry anymore, they are packed up in crates and sent to Japan for slaughter. And that's an issue that we're asking for citizens to engage in. And
Okay, I want to talk more about that. So these are transports, these are live transports. So they're put on a plane, you know, not first class conditions, I'm sure. They're and then are they, do we know if they're drugged before they're put on the plane? Do they have access to food and water? What's that like? And then they go to, where do they go? And then what happens to them when they get there?
according to industry standards in horse racing, we know there's plenty of drug use, steroid use, in order to keep the horses running and racing. And even injured horses, they're forced to race when they don't want to, they have injuries. So they're pumped up full of drugs in order to keep them alive to be used and abused in the industries. And after they can't, they're packed up in crates. Now, the CFIA, there's regulations there that dictate their transport rules. So horses, they're supposed to be packed at least just one per crate. And investigators here, local investigators with our Voice for Animals group, that's b4a.org, my fellow co-activists here, they've investigated the Edmonton International Airport when there's flights, and they found there's several horses packed to a crate, sometimes 3 or 4, and that's breaking the CFIA's own rules. And that's what they've been sued about. And by Rebecca Breeder and CHDC, that case can be found in the news. It concluded in December 2019, and the case was rejected. The judge ruled that the CFIA has no legal duty to enforce that law. And that's kind of
Wow.
ridiculous because they made it themselves. So there's going to be an appeal process, and that's one of the issues we're asking citizens to engage in today. So viewers, please visit defendhorsescanada.org, and you can find out more information there. And also on our V4A website, you can see some of the video that our local activists shot at the Edmonton airport.
Oh, wow. And so when they're shipped, I mean, horses don't always get along with each other. So you can imagine 3 horses in a crate that aren't getting along. It would be horrifying. Above and beyond all the other, just the idea of what's happening to them. Horses are beautiful, intelligent creatures, right? And so, I mean, as all animals are, but people, I think, can really identify with horses. A lot of people can really identify with them as having, relationships with them through their lives as children growing up and that sort of thing. So I can imagine that a lot of people would rally around this. And what happens to these horses? Where do they go and what happens to them there?
Once there's many places they were sent to. Down south in southern Alberta, there's processing plants. That's a nice way of saying slaughterhouse. For horses, it's called Bouverie Exports. That's down near Fort Macleod. So there's a horse feedlot there. They're either slaughtered there, they're sold off to kill buyers, and they're shipped off to European countries or to Japan or anywhere. And it's a very secretive industry, so we don't always know where they're sent to. And we need to break that chain here. And one of the ways is to get involved and get active. We need informed
Right.
public and to pressure our government here
And
again.
are they being used for human food, do you think, or for like dog food, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, they are being used for both. There's been reports of some horse meat being sold in Quebec and some European countries as well.
And
So
are they
that
packaged?
information is also available.
Do, do
Sorry, Janine?
do people know that they're buying horse meat? Like there's a market for horse meat?
In certain countries there is, and in parts of Quebec, I heard there is too. Uh, even IGA, the grocer, has horse meat. If you check on their website, it is there, unfortunately.
Wow. Okay, well, that's definitely, I really respect the work that you're doing. What kind of reaction are you getting from people today? You've been out there for a couple of hours, I think, Max.
Yeah, we're just about to wrap up our day. I think a lot of people are really on board once they find out what really goes on behind the scenes here and how our politicians are not looking out for the interests of animals or the environment or themselves, and how intertwined these industries are, and how the corporate influence, corporate lobbyists really affect politics. And it's unfortunate that animals' lives are stuck in a game of political football. So, as I was kind of saying or suggesting before, all it takes is a few certain individuals, a caring public, to call your MP and demand some changes, and they're obligated to talk to you. And we've passed some progressive laws recently. In 2019, we passed Bill S-238 and Bill S-201. They banned the import of shark fins into Canada, and that made Canada instantly a leader in marine conservation, shark conservation. And also, Bill S-238 was banning the captive breeding of cetaceans, dolphins, and whales to captivity and slavery. So that's going to end aquariums and facilities like Ontario's marine lands. So that is a step forward in the right direction, but we still have many issues to deal with here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then things like with Lucy the elephant, what sort of suggestions are you offering for where Lucy could go? Are there, I guess there's elephant sanctuaries, I think, like in Thailand and places like that, but then that would mean she would have to travel. What have you guys thought about where Lucy might like to end up?
Yeah, there's a whole political campaign about Lucy as well over the years. And there's some sanctuaries. There's an elephant sanctuary in California and Tennessee, and we would like an independent assessment for her. Her plight can be found from a separate Edmonton activist group here called Leap for Lucy, leapforlucy.com, and also v4a.org. There's affidavits from biologists and experts all on our websites here. And it's just a shame that there's a lack of political will preventing a proper investigation into her
Well,
life
we
and her
we
plight.
need more vegan plant-based politicians, I think, and then it's already in their consciousness, right? We carry this consciousness with us as vegans, and we bring it to whatever work we do. So we need to be electing vegan politicians, I think, is one way to get the voice on the inside. Um, so is there anything else you want to talk to us today, Max? I know you guys are wrapping up for the day.
Well, just right now we're showing on the screen here some videos of the various issues here. And eventually we'd like to have this animal bill rights passed into law. And I think I would just like to talk a little bit about my court case and what I've experienced here, Janine, it's all right?
Absolutely, go ahead.
So this, I believe, would fall under the right to rescue. So I've been charged for filming conditions inside a turkey farm, and I've been arrested. And unfortunately, I'm not able to speak publicly about this issue or challenge government laws or government policies because of the situation that I am in professionally and the way my name was brought up publicly in the media. It was like a straitjacket being put on me, and that's because, sorry, I work in a certain industry. It's public information now already. I was named as an employee of one of Canada's main media companies. And disclaimer here, the work that I do as an activist does not represent any company. This represents just myself as an individual and the animals. That's what I am doing that on behalf of, not for any corporation or company. And the way my name was brought into the public sphere prevented me from challenging government policies or corporate interests. And I have not been able to speak about that. But I would like to a little bit right now, and that's what we're doing right now here with Rose's Law. And I believe that an individual should, as part of a democracy, everybody, every citizen should have the right to publicly challenge government policies in the public realm, speak about it, and call out laws that are unjust, and without the fear of being persecuted for it professionally or under the law. And that's what we are here today for Rose's Law. But because of a certain industry that I work in, there is the commercial restraint that is put on me. And that commercial restraint involves some of these issues that we are talking about today and that we are trying to expose. And unfortunately, because of this corporate lobby, they are running roughshod over the lives of us, the environment, and animals. And in order to hold this corporate totalitarian state into account, we need to challenge them without this oligarchic ruling class who seeks to dominate animals and us in the name of corporate profits. So I hope to continue doing animal rights, and if our governments don't respond, we are going to continue taking greater and greater risks to expose these unlawful injustices and change the laws, whatever it takes.
Okay, peaceful nonviolent, of course. It's sort of ironic to the extreme that you work for one of the major media outlets, but you have to go to the streets to do this advocacy. You don't have access to their audience. That's how it is, right? And that needs to change.
It does. One of my favorite journalists and activists, his name is Chris Hedges. He was fired from the New York Times in 2003 for opposing the Iraq invasion. And that's what we're up against. When we challenge corporate power and the dominant narrative, those corporate forces seek to silence us and destroy us. So democracy is not something that we achieve. It's something that we have to constantly fight for. And in order for democracy to function, we need true and accurate information to present to the public, not the information filtered down from corporate interests who seek profits at the expense of life.
That's
So this is our democracy at work that we have to constantly challenge.
That's what it is.
And
Democracy isn't about just putting a mark on a paper, right? It's about what you're doing right there. That's democracy.
which is constantly under threats. And we've seen so many laws passed against us, in large part because of us. We have egg laws in Alberta and in Ontario, and pending in Manitoba and in BC as well. So activists there have taken action for Rose's Law. Please check Facebook. There's a group called Rose's Law Canada Pressure Campaign, and you can see activists in Ontario at King Cole Duck. They've taken bold action there and rescued animals, and they're pending a trial. And same for Les Greg Piggery in Quebec. They're pending trial as well. And same for Meet the Victims in BC. Now, all these activists, they're being charged, but why aren't the industries that are abusing the animals? So it just doesn't make sense at all.
Right. Yeah, I think the BC case has had its preliminary first hearings, and there's some issue with the SPCA having, I think there's a lot of questions that are being asked about the SPCA right now about the way they're interacting with the activists and the pig farm. And there's reports that the pig farm is a major donor to the SPCA and that they hold some kind of event. I don't know. I forget the details, but it's follow the money often, isn't it?
Yes, SPCA. There's also Alberta SPCA. I can speak a little bit to that about that. And the SPCA, they can only enforce what the laws mandate. So we have Alberta Animal Protection Act 841. And the SPCA, they're a private charity, they're underfunded, they're under-resourced, and they can only enforce what's in this document here. So this, first of all, this document has to change. And I'll show you a little bit, a clause in there that is an exemption or a loophole that how these animal husbandry industries can get away with animal abuse. So under the Animal Protection Act, it states in section 2 that prohibition against causing distress. No person shall cause or permit an animal of which the person is the owner or the person in charge to be or continue to be in distress. So there's a but in the next section. Here's the loophole. It states, no person shall cause an animal to be in distress. This section does not apply if the distress results from an activity carried on in accordance with the regulations or in accordance with the reasonable and generally accepted practices of animal care, management, husbandry, hunting, fishing, trapping, pest control, or slaughter. So those industries are states right there. It's exempted from, if you're in those industries, you're allowed to cause an animal to be in distress.
Right, right. So
So the other issue we have,
the laws need to
the
change.
other,
Yeah, go ahead.
the other issue we have with us today is the dog sledding industry, and in many jurisdictions, there's laws pertaining to how long you can keep a dog on a leash, on a tether. In Calgary, it has some of the strictest laws. You cannot keep a dog on a tether at all, and in some jurisdictions, it's limited number of time. And because of that law in the Animal Protection Act, sled dogs can be kept on a short chain for the vast majority of their lives. And when they're not pulling sleds for tourists or in a Iditarod Yukon type of horse sled dog race, they can be kept chained up on these tethers for the heat of the summer or the cold of the winter for 20 hours, 20 to 23 hours a day. And that's because even though the animal's in distress, that law, that exemption allows the mushers and the owners to do so because it's generally accepted practices. After me and my team were arrested for filming animal cruelty in an Alberta turkey farm, there was heavy political fallout due to pressure from the animal agribusiness sector. And in a press conference right at that very turkey farm, the Premier, Jason Kenney, announced the draconian measures that the government would be taking against animal rights activists. He announced that they would issue heavy fines in the thousands of dollars for trespass, the use of peace bonds and injunctions, jail time, and assign a special crown prosecutor for agricultural crimes. This is a waste of resources that could be better used towards an agency that protects animals, which we do not have other than a private charity, the SPCA. And Jason Kenney also outright lied to the public in that press conference. He said that if people have concerns about the food industry, that they should go through the governing agencies, and that this turkey farm and others are inspected biannually by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. The CFIA is a federal agency and does not have the authority or the resources to inspect every animal farm across the country. They monitor livestock transport and slaughterhouses, but there are no agencies to enforce animal welfare on farms other than the under-resourced SPCA. And when the SPCA investigates, they have to show up like health inspectors and come unannounced, not call a farm ahead of time and give them a week's notice so that they can meet the minimum standards. And also, Premier Jason Kenney said that the Alberta Poultry and Turkey Board has the strictest standards in the country. So this is another example of government caving into industry, and it's an example how of the industry polices itself, because the Poultry Board is comprised of insiders of the animal agricultural business. And also, as a consequence of my arrest, there was a media fallout. And when the police released my name, I was identified in the media as an employee of one of the country's main news networks. And Rebel News picked up on this, and they produced a tabloid piece about me saying that I was a journalist or a media boss, and that I hired young vegan girls to protest with me at the turkey farm in order to get a story. And I won't go into more details about that, and that tabloid news story is on their YouTube channel, but this situation was the muzzling of my activism. I'm an electronics technician. I repair equipment, and I have no editorial input into the stories that appear on the news or any decision making whatsoever about that. The last thing, Janine, that I would like to conclude with is a quote from one of my favorite peace activists of all time, Gandhi. He told the world that the greatness of a nation can be judged by the way it treats its animals.
Right. Wow, there's lots of work to do, Max, and thank you so much for doing that work. And I'll include all the links that you sent, and we'll invite people to go and do some more research and get involved.